Hello, I'm John Kelly, and this is a podcast of Mystery Train. For rights reasons, the music is shorter than in the original programme. Mystery Train hits the rails Sunday to Thursday at 7 p.m. on RTE Lyric FM. Anyway, if you wonder what that is, that's music from Frank Zappa. It's called Son of Mr. Green Jeans. Not only the title of a fine piece of music from the Hot Rats album, but it's also the name of a band. A band that starred Cillian Murphy. Hiya, Cillian.
How are you, John?
Thanks a million for coming in.
Pleasure.
Good to have you here. Yeah, Son of Mr. Green Jeans.
Yeah.
Could have been, could have been.
Well, yeah, you never know. It definitely wasn't.
Is it true? Is it true that you guys were offered a big record deal?
Yeah, that is true. And it was like 1996 when they still offered deals like that. You know, when they were a possibility. It's
like 5 albums or something.
Exactly, but it was, it's the terrible deal for the artists, really, particularly when you're youngsters, and they generally tended to drop the bands. We weren't making very, very sort of commercial music. It was inspired by that, so you can kind of tell.
You were serious about it though at that point. That's what you wanted to be, was it? You wanted to be a musician.
Yeah, we were. I mean, we were. It was me and my brother and a few school pals, and we'd been in various different bands, I suppose, from the age of like 11 or 12. And I wouldn't count myself among them, but the rest of the lads were like serious musicians and still are. They all play, and they were really, really good.
And what was your function in the band?
Yeah, I stood up at the front and did a bit of singing, and but
I was going to say stood up at the front and look pretty, but in this case, in your case, yes, yeah.
Well, that's a very kind of you to say. Thank God it's radio. But I
think the both of us would be too much. But you wrote some of the songs too, didn't you? You wrote all of the songs, did you?
Well, it was a collective effort, But yeah. It was that. Do you remember that time where kind of like acid jazz was kind of fashionable for a minute, and but we were into that, like early Pink Floyd and that kind of prog element, and so it was just great live. It was great fun as kids to get up and express yourself like that live in pubs around Cork, and that's what we were doing. It was just really, really, really exciting.
But in the years you're talking about, I mean, Pink Floyd and prog and all that kind of stuff was not really what was required, Not
really, no, and I think we were sort of after the curve a little bit in that sort of, because when that whole acid jazz scene had kind of popped up, but there was a sort of, people were into, hearing people play on their instruments, I think, at that time a bit. But then, it kind of, I think it was the right thing. Looking back retrospectively, I think it was the right thing for us that it didn't happen, because we all would have had to move to London. My brother was 16 anyway, and
well, it wasn't really feasible, was it?
No, it wasn't. I don't think my parents were never going to let that happen.
Yeah, so no real regrets about that?
No regrets. I mean, there would have been, I suppose, closer to the time. But now, the fact that we're all still really good friends, that to me feels like we've preserved something far more important than the music, really.
Quite right. Okay, first choice, Cillian, is what?
Well,
F.S. Blum.
Yeah, so F.S. Blum and Nils Frahm. I've been a fan of Nils Frahm for a long time, and he's a really prolific, I guess, German composer and pianist. And so, when you sort of become a fan of somebody, you start like, looking through all their discography and then you find out other stuff and collaborations they've done. So he's apparently done 3 records with this guy, F.S. Blum, who's like a guitar player, but he kind of just, makes noise as well, and toys and all sorts of interesting stuff. So it's a very beautiful record, very sort of reflective, kind of relaxing record, which I listen to a lot. It's one of my favorites of this year.
And this is called Day 1-1.
There you go.
F.S. Blum and Nils Frahm. And that's F.S. Blum, Nils Frahm, a track called Day 1-1. And that comes... Are we sure that's called Day 1-1-1, Cillian? Because I see in German here, Tag 1, Tag 2.
Okay.
So that's Day 1, Day 2, isn't it?
Well, I did German for the Leaving Cert.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I'm sure somebody will phone
7.
in.
You did German for what, the Leavenscert, yeah?
Yeah, and I've forgotten it all, willfully.
Clearly, yes. No, I did German for O-level, and all I learned was how to count to 3 and say the Hail Mary, which I have to tell you is no use in Hamburg. None at all. Now, Cillian, the great thing about this is, Cillian, you don't do interviews, and I understand entirely why. So we're here to talk about music. We're not here to talk about any of the other stuff, right? But just where does I'm curious about the music and your early days fitting in, because you obviously made creative decisions about what you would do when you were at school. And this was Presentation Brothers. Actually, before we get to school, was it a musical household? Was there music in the house?
Yeah, there would have been. Both my mum and dad, are into music, and it would have been always on the radio or on the record player or on the tape deck or whatever. And when we were driving, going on holidays, there would have always been music, but never in a sort of like you must listen to this track or you must appreciate this album. It would just be stuff that they were listening to. And they were big traditional music fans, traditional Irish music fans. And, but they would have, my dad would introduce me to the Beatles and then once, I think for me anyway, once you appreciate the Beatles as a youngster, that kind of opens, because you can go backwards and forwards from there, And so I remember very clearly, listening to the Beatles and then going to Cork City Library and renting a cassette of Abbey Road and bringing it home and putting it on and hearing that like, and this, it was kind of life changing. Yeah. But the fact that I rented the cassette, I still think is hilarious.
You're right about the Beatles too, because it introduces you, without you realising it, to all different types of music. Yeah. From music hall to pop, well, obviously pop music, but also to soul to rock and roll. And even sometimes the Beatles actually are playing heavy metal, actually, at
absolutely.
times. So it's quite bizarre, but you don't know it at the time.
You don't, but you're kind of absorbing it, unconsciously. And then as you get older and you see the sort of breadth of their development, and then you go back and listen to the artists that influenced them, and then you look at nowadays still how they're influencing bands. It's kind of just phenomenal, really is.
And when you say that your folks listen to traditional music, were they kind of deep into it, or were they listening to, was it the Chieftains, was it the Dubliners, or was it were they listening to people at sessions? And
yeah, they would. I remember being at a lot of sessions when we were younger, and they actually met down in West Kerry at a session, I think, in the 70s, early 70s. There was that big revival in the 70s for trad and amazing players, and so they were kind of involved in that, I think.
Now they were both involved in education as well. So were you obliged, education-wise, to pursue music? Did you have to do piano lessons, for instance, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, I went to piano lessons, but it wasn't for me. I wasn't very good. But my brother went and had a brilliant teacher, and he's really now a serious pianist, and we all kind of, I think my sisters as well. We all took up instruments and put them down, and took them up and put them down.
Do you ever regret not pursuing lessons? Because I know I do. I know a lot of people who do. They kind of wish now that they knew how to play the piano properly.
Yeah, I mean, the piano is the kind of cornerstone for any real serious musician, isn't it? I'd love to have been able to play, but kind of that window opens and closes. Really, I think you need to have somewhere in your youth have attempted it.
Okay, second choice is from an album I love, actually, an album called Party on 4AD. It came out in May.
Yeah.
Aldous Harding.
Yeah, so I love watching Later with Jules Holland, because it's so rare now you get to see bands perform live. You don't go out and on the telly. I mean, if you don't go out and pay for going to the gig. And I saw this girl perform, and she absolutely just blew my windows. I was like, that girl is amazing. And then I had to, again, you go and you just find out about her, and she's from New Zealand. And it's really, really beautiful, kind of haunting music. And there's one moment in this song, I think, that, there's a little bit of production that just separates it, and you'll hear it. But the whole album is amazing, and she's quite a performer. That performance in Jules is worth a look.
Yeah, I saw it myself, and was also surprised by that thing you're talking about.
Yeah,
it's brilliant, isn't it?
It's really brilliant.
You'll notice this, folks, when it comes up. This is, in fact, I've been playing this one on the show a bit. This is called "Imagining My Man," Aldous Harding. And that's Aldous Harding there, "Imagining My Man." The choice of Cillian Murphy is with me in studio tonight. Cillian, we were just talking before that started about that little hey bit in the middle of it. And I mean, it's produced by John Parrish, who worked with PJ Harvey and stuff. So
that explains it.
Now, it may well be Aldous's idea, but a good producer is pretty helpful. John Parrish. So that album is called Party. I was about to ask you about school earlier on. We got sidetracked. Presentation Brothers, was it?
Yes.
Now, what kind of a place was that in terms of, music and creativity and all that kind of thing?
I mean, I don't think it was high on their list of sort of priorities at the time when I was there.
The rap is sport, isn't it, really?
Yeah, and it's very academic and great rugby school, obviously, like Ronan O'Gara and Peter Stringer in my year in school. So that kind of tells you the calibre of player that was there. But I had a great English teacher, Bill Wall, who's a poet and a novelist. That
William Wall.
Exactly, yeah. And he was very supportive to me in the school, and we used to do school concerts and stuff, and I think they made room, and I think it's great now apparently for kids that are into, I don't know, performing or theatre or whatever, and they have amazing facilities there, but. Yeah, I mean, that's where the whole music thing happened, really. So I can't knock it.
Yeah, and you were saying to me on the way in, actually, that you were saying to me earlier that the transition year for you was when you first got to act as well.
Yeah, we were the guinea pigs. We were the first year that transition year was introduced. So we had a drama module. And Pat Kiernan from Kirkadurka Theatre Company came in and did this drama module. It was my first time ever experiencing sort of like performance or acting. We just kind of did these little sketches and everything, but completely I was completely engaged by it. So that was the first time I met Pat, and then it kind of sparked an idea. I didn't do it then for another 3 or 4 years, but it kind of sparked it.
What were you listening to in terms of, you're at school, you're a teenager, you've got loads of pals, you're all listening to music and making tapes for each other and swapping things. Now, what was in the ether during those years for you?
I mean, it was a great time for music. I mean, Radiohead and Nirvana and Blur and Oasis and all that stuff. They're iconic bands. And then, but I think we were kind of being willfully kind of older fashioned as well, and listening to a lot of, Stevie Wonder and the Beatles and Van Morrison and stuff like that.
And what about Cork's finest? Was that in the air as well?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, the Frank Walters and the Sultans of Ping, we'd go into pubs at 16, drinking cider, trying to sit next to the lads from the Franks who've now become pals, which is mad. I think the Frank Walters are an amazing band, and they've produced such fantastic albums, still are producing fantastic albums over the years. Yeah, it's the amount of music that's come out of Cork, the amount of different types of music is kind of brilliant.
When Kevin Barry was on the programme, was it Cork he described as the reggae capital of Europe? Are you aware of this?
Yeah, well, I have to say, I only got into reggae much, much, much later, but I remember, it's always been a great love for reggae down in Cork. Always, yeah.
You see, when Kevin said that, when someone who writes short stories like that tells you something, you have to kind of stand back and go, I wonder, is he telling me the truth? but clearly he is. Okay, Cillian, your next choice, this is what I was worried about, it's called Sex Music.
Sex Music on Lyric FM.
But they'll cut that bit out and use it as a kind of a promo. Beak. Beak is Jeff Barrow, isn't it, from Portishead?
Yes, this is his band, and I love it. It's got such a groove, and it's really, really, really cinematic, and he also does scores, soundtracks, and he scored a film I was in called Free Fire. Himself and Ben Salisbury, they scored the film, and it was this really kind of chaotic, sort of free jazz score. That sounds mental, but it really worked for the film. And then this as well, it's just got such a feel to it. I love it.
It's all over now, baby blue. That's them. Bob Dylan cover. The choice of Cillian Murphy. It's hard to resist that guitar part.
So
never
good.
mind the singing. And just before we go any further, let's little blast of this for you, Cillian. Apparently you haven't heard this. See what I did there?
Wow.
See
I
what I
wouldn't
did?
recognise that. I love that album, but I wouldn't recognise that.
That's Beck and Audley. Okay, Cillian Murphy's with me in studio tonight, and he's picking the tunes. I picked that one. We're on to the Beatles.
Yeah.
As you said earlier, the Beatles was just sort of, it was your band, really. Mm-hmm. And it was also a connection to your dad as well.
Yeah.
And what else did we say about them? Oh, yeah, that they influence just about everything.
Yeah.
As you move on. And
Yeah.
Are you, as a result of the Beatles, do you think, a more democratic listener to music directly as a result of the Beatles?
I mean, I would hope so. But you know, I love their curiosity. You know, as they were making music, they were just sort of like explorers, weren't they? And you could see that as they grew and developed from the beginning.
Where do you stand on the John and Paul argument? Should there even be one? I don't think so.
No, I love both of them. Always have. And the thing is, they wrote such varied and kind of like completely opposite songs. But then it's very hard to put one above the other. You know, but it's great. It's
but
a great
perception. There's this perception that McCartney is somehow kind of soft and marshmallowy, and John Lennon was the hard man and the arty one.
Yeah.
And actually, in many ways, it's completely the other way around.
Yeah, I mean, McCartney was very much the kind of avant-garde one at the beginning, you know. And if you look, I mean, you look at Pepper, you look at the second side of Abbey Road, and you know, Magical Mystery Tour, like conceptually what he was sort of trying to track down, I think is kind of amazing. I mean, it goes for without saying what Lennon did and how dangerous he was and all of that. But, you know, I'd be very careful about sort of coming down on the one side or the other.
I interviewed George Martin once, and I asked him about, you know, Sgt. Pepper, and, you know, and he kept saying things like, well, you know, Paul was very interested in classical music, and John was the rocker. He kept saying John was the rocker. John wanted to play Chuck Berry songs.
Yeah.
So at that stage, John wanted to play Chuck Berry songs.
Yeah.
And McCartney was the one coming in with the what do you call them, Stockhausen records and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, you picked a track from Revolver.
Yeah, well, I picked this track because, well, I love it, and my kids just love this track. We play it in the car loud.
I've heard you going past. There's the Beatles from Revolver. Got to Get You Into My Life. The choice of Cillian Murphy. Cillian's with me in studio. Cillian, when you went to college, you went to study law.
Yeah.
Right. I made the same mistake, I have to tell you. But you wisely didn't see it through.
Yeah, we didn't suit each other.
Oh, I can understand that.
Yeah.
I can understand that. So I'm just curious, because there might be people listening who are at that point of their lives and they're wondering, right, what do I do? At that age, you know, sometimes you feel the world is your oyster. There's a whole lot of things you might possibly be good at and you don't know yet. So at that point, when you were studying law, music was still a possibility, was it? And acting was something you'd just done in your transition year. You hadn't really.
No, I'd done a bit of like dramat acting at first year college as well.
Yeah.
But just at that time as well, I got the part in this play called Disco Pigs. So sort of, it was a lot of kind of avenues opening up.
Well, when you say you got that part, you weren't known as an actor. I mean, the version I have is you more or less showed up at Curating and said, "Is there anything I can do here? You know, I want to do something."
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, after meeting Pat that time, I then met Enda Walsh through Pat, and then I just pestered them for an audition, and then I eventually auditioned for Enda and got the part.
Why do you want to do it? Do you know, the reason I ask is, I can understand, why you want to be in a band. Because you put on records and you think, I'd like to do that. And you're in front of the mirror playing with your tennis racket or something. You think, I'd love to do this. Must be cool. You know? Yeah. But to want to be an actor, do you see an actor in a movie and say, I like that, or I want to be him, or I want to be,
Well, I was interested in film, but like in a sort of a general way. But specifically, I had gone to see a production that Curating did called, it was a production of A Clockwork Orange.
Ah, right.
And they did it in Sir Henry's before they knocked it down a few years later, but it was like this extraordinary, I've spoken about this before, but it was this extraordinary promenade, guys on stilts and with mohawks and, you know, dry ice and like banging house music. And it was the most sort of affecting thing for a, I don't know, 17, 18-year-old. I thought that was theatre. And if theatre that was my first like proper play, you know. So I've always said that about theatre. It's the first experience you get of it. You know, you can go in and see a terrible play and people will be turned off it for life and they will never go back. But if you see something like electric like that, you know, it becomes something you're kind of chasing for the rest of your life as an audience member or as a performer. And for me as a performer, it was just, I really wanted to be involved. So there was kind of like, I had a few, you know, sort of things that came together, like meeting Pat, seeing that play, and then this audition arose. So it was like, I should try this out.
Great. And it's funny what you described. It's almost like a gig in a way. You know, it's like going to see some over the top performance by an art rock group or something.
Yeah,
you know,
it was
what's going on.
It was immersive.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? It was not like, you know, sitting in an old fashioned theatre, and you know, it was like you were in it.
It doesn't happen very often.
No, it's really rare. But Kirk and Duck are amazing doing those site specific productions, and they get the audience really, really involved. And they've been doing them for years, and they're
and
amazing.
Then weren't you a lucky man, Enda was?
Listen, you know? Yeah, I was. Yeah, I can't believe my luck. You know, we're still working together, and so nobody knew he was going to be this kind of important writer. You know, he was just kind of one of us.
But he was interested in exactly what you're talking about. He still does that.
Yeah. You know, and I also think, you know, that thing you asked me about, you know, being kids or it's about curiosity, isn't it? And I think like, if you're curious, kind of follow that curiosity and see where it leads you, whether in any kind of walk of life.
This thing we were doing tonight, you know, playing records like this, that's exactly what it's about, isn't it? You're following this, you follow this web of music as far as it'll take. That's the fun of it.
Yes.
You know, it's not, you know, people say, you're an awful, nerd or music snob or anything. It's quite the opposite, actually. It's be as open as possible and follow everything down whatever road it goes.
That's the thing. And that's why it's so endlessly fascinating. It never stops being like that. Yeah.
The band, who are exactly that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah, and that album, like Music from the Big Pink, it's such a kind of a journey going on that album, and you kind of feel like you're in the room with those guys. And I particularly love this track because it feels like a jam with these guys. And Garth Hudson, who is, to my mind, a kind of a rock and roll genius. You know, the sounds he gets off those organs are phenomenal. And again, the groove of this, you don't hear anything like this nowadays. And
a good lesson for kids is that his parents were horrified that he joined this band because he was a proper classical player. Yeah. And you'll hear him here. There's the band from the album Music from Big Pink, the choice of Cillian Murphy. Funny enough, just listening to that, it's kind of a heavy metal song, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, Garth is doing the full-on Deep Purple thing there.
Yeah.
But that's anybody who doesn't know the band, who were Bob Dylan's band for a very productive period. They're one of those groups that if you get into them, you will be sent off in various directions, you know, and into different genres, and because they could play anything, really.
They really could.
And did. Your next choice, Cillian, is Melanie Di Biasio. I've already played a track from her new album. This is from an album called No Deal, a song called I'm Gonna Leave You.
Yeah, so I heard this on the radio, and it stopped me in my tracks, and then I went, that sounds very Nina Simone, and then I realised that actually it is Nina Simone. So she's doing a Nina Simone cover. She's a Belgian singer, I believe. That's about all I know about her, other than this is like a cracking cover.
Okay, I'm Gonna Leave You, Melanie Di Biasio. And this is Mystery Train on RTE Lyric FM, the Sunday night special service. Cillian Murphy's with me in studio. Cillian's picking the music. Great choices so far, Cillian. Your next one is a Nick Cave song.
Yeah, Nick Cave. Love Nick Cave.
This is an album that I think I deliberately missed it because I knew about the film I knew about the tragedy that had happened. And I thought, I don't think right now I want to go there.
Yeah, it's one of those you kind of need to set time aside to actually go there. But it's worth it. And actually, strangely, like, it's quite, like, uplifting in many ways. I mean, that documentary is just so beautiful and so brave. But this song kind of, for me, sums it up, you know.
I mean, he'd lost his son.
Yeah.
And was quite open about all of this in the film and so on. You know, it's tough stuff.
But a lot of the songs were written prior to the tragedy, so, you know, but they sort of seem to sort of address it sort of obliquely or whatever. But this, you know, this song, just anyway, as in a Cave song, it just, you know, has all of the things that you adore about him. But I recommend, it's one of those albums, you know, just put it on and it's a headphone record, I think.
This album was Skeleton Tree.
Yeah.
Have you followed him right from the start?
No, again, kind of would have been later that I really started getting into him. And I'm a sucker for a good lyric. And I mean, his lyrics are just, I mean, you take him aside from the songs and they're standalone, you know?
Okay, this one's called I Need You. The Cave and the Bad Seeds from the album Skeleton Tree, the choice of Cillian Murphy. His music appears on Peaky Blinders quite a bit. So we were talking earlier about whether or not you would have any say in these things, but I'm sure you get a kick out of it.
Yeah, well, we've been really lucky with Peaky that a lot of great artists have lent their music, and so even the fact that maybe somewhere in the world they've sat down and watched an episode is enough of a kick for me, you know.
It's weird, you know, when you meet people from different disciplines. And I've sometimes seen people from different disciplines meet, and one of them might be like, you know, really famous, you know, like a really famous rock star or something. And he meets a writer who is not well known at all, and certainly comparatively not well known at all. And the rock star is completely excited, really thrilled, you know. And I guess when you're doing something that you do, where you're on stage or you're on a movie, you don't know who's at the show, you know, and suddenly it's, you know, I don't know, Bowie was at the gig or something, or Bruce Springsteen came to see you or something, you know, those kind of things.
That's never happened.
Well, you know, but I know people that, you know, those sorts of things have happened. You never believe who came to the play tonight, you know. And, you know, it's like a leveler in some way, you know, and it must be quite a thrill when that kind of thing does happen, you know.
Yeah, but you always, if there's any chance of someone, you know, who you admire coming in, if you're doing a play, you always say, please don't tell me.
Don't tell me.
Don't tell me.
Yeah.
You know. And don't tell me until afterwards, and they've left.
Would that be on your mind, seriously, if you're going to go out and stage?
I wouldn't like to know if there's someone, a hero of mine, ever took the time to turn up to a show. You'd rather not, because you try to clear your mind of all that stuff as much as you can, and it, no matter how in control you are of things or your own brain, it'll just seep in. It just will.
Your next choice is Fionn Regan.
Oh yeah,
and he's quite something. When I presented Other Voices, Fionn was on it, and back in the very early days, and he was a nervous, you know, performer. First time, one of his early times, I really had to put my arm around him, you know, and he then sort of blossomed big time. Yeah. He's quite a talent, and you've always championed him right from the beginning. Well,
yeah, I've always loved him, and I think he arrived like this fully formed songwriter. Was kind of, the songs were just so extraordinarily mature, and again, like talking about lyrics, his lyrics are absolutely beautiful. I have a huge amount of time for him, and he just played down in Cork at Sounds from a Safe Harbour, which I was involved with, and did this beautiful gig in St. Luke's Church, and it was kind of magical. He's really got it. You know, it's just a true original. And this is my favourite song of the most recent album.
It's called Euphoria. And that's Fionn Regan there, and a song called Euphoria, the choice of Cillian Murphy. Cillian, we talked earlier about, you were in a band and the band had an opportunity and so on. But you are still involved in music in lots of ways. For instance, tell us about what you've just curated, because you curated a few things. And tell me about that and what the attraction is in that for you. Because you are a busy man, and when you're not working, you could be sitting at home minding your own business and playing music to yourself.
Well, I suppose it's this sort of symptoms of being a frustrated musician, or, being so kind of interested in it still, and being, and wanting to get involved. So when you get, people offer you these kind of opportunities to kind of have an input into a festival or something like that, and it's hugely flattering and very humbling that you get to do that, and then I guess you get to rub shoulders with musicians and chat and go to gigs, and that for me is just like heaven. Yeah. So yes, just recently I co-curated this festival in Cork called Sounds from a Safe Harbour with Mary Higson, who is the real brains behind the whole thing, and the Desner brothers from the National and Enda Walsh. So we kind of had this weekend in Cork, and it was magical. It genuinely was magical. And Fionn played, and a few other people who will play later on played, and it was just lovely. And it was a very sort of relaxed affair where, there was these free gigs on in pubs and talks, and lots of co-collaborations, which musicians love. They really love, just picking up a guitar with someone they've never played with before and just doing it. And so a lot of the audience down there got to see stuff for the first time, or perhaps the only time. So it was really wonderful.
And I suppose it's probably nice for you to be involved in something without the pressure of being Cillian Murphy movie star.
Well, I never really feel that anyway, and it was kind of the fact that it was from, it was in Cork, where I'm from, and, I just remember playing music in Cork so many years ago, but what was particularly great about it was that there was no sort of delineation between artist and sort of music fan, and everyone was just in it together.
But I suppose what I mean by my question is that in a circumstance like that, I suspect you're less likely to get people chasing you for your autograph, because they're probably, they want Bryce Desner's autograph as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And whereas if it's a kind of a Hollywood situation, the focus would be intense and weird and all that kind of stuff.
I think it's how you set it up, really. And there was just no kind of, none of that VIP thing. It was just everyone in it together. And I think that comes from Mary Higson, who set it all up. But I do think it comes from the top. And a lot of that stuff with the red carpet, it's basically because you put up a barrier. You know what I mean? And that's all it is. You stand there and you stand there. That's the reason why it happens.
Yeah. The other way you've pursued your interest in music, I don't know how often you've done this, but I know you've done it at least once. You've directed a video as well.
Yeah.
For that Manchester band. What are they called?
Money.
Money, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've directed one. I've been in one with Fionn. I've been in one with Leslie Feist. And
you've also been in one with Paul Hartnell.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Clock.
Yeah.
If this was television, I'd show it right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a treat for me to get to do that again. And I suppose in themselves, I think the videos we're trying to make a little short art film, really, to accompany a song that I really like. So, and again, it's just artists saying to other artists, I dig what you do. Should we just go and make something? I
recommend people go on YouTube and see The Clock.
It's a bit of fun, yeah.
It's a bit of fun, yeah. It's more than that, actually. The next track is Feist, Leslie Feist, who's part of Broken Social Scene as well.
Yeah, she is.
And you're mates with those guys, aren't you?
Well, yeah, this is me. Yeah, you're really showing up my true groupie fandomness here. I got to know Kevin Drew, who's the sort of de facto kind of leader of that band, many years ago, and I just love their music, and I love the philosophy of the band, which is it's a collective really of a load of old friends that make this amazingly kind of euphoric music. I always
prefer the songs when Feist is singing. I prefer her singing. Do you know what I mean? And I know they mix it up, and
they do.
But that's just my preference.
But it was through them that I discovered Feist. See, and that's another way that kind of one band leads you on to another.
Yeah.
And this song of hers, Any Party of Pleasure, I just love the lyric of this, you know, where it's the most simple declaration of love, where she goes, I'd leave any party for you. I think that's such a great sentiment, and it's a beautiful song.
As we were talking about earlier, that little bit of production detail at the end, which makes it kind of special. That's Feist and Any Party, the choice of Cillian Murphy. Cillian, when I asked you to put together a list of tunes, you sent it to me as a Spotify list. How do you listen to music these days? I mean, what way do you listen to music? Because some people will come in here with a pile of CDs. Some people will tell me it's all on vinyl. Everybody's different now. Yeah,
I have like a huge stack of CDs under the stairs, and I don't play them anymore. So what I do is I listen on Spotify, and then if I like the album, I buy the vinyl. So, and I keep the vinyl in the living room. So I feel like, I'm actually supporting the artists by buying the actual thing itself, and it sounds so lovely on vinyl. So I'm kind of, digital and analog simultaneously, I suppose.
And are you the kind of person who can sit down in an armchair and, facing your stereo and listen side A, turn it over, side B? Can you do that?
Oh man, yes, when I can find the time. That's one of my favourite things in the world, when I can find the time. It's hard to find the time, when you've kids and you're just running around and everything, or you're away traveling or whatever.
And how do you listen to music when you're away? Because I'm sure you need it more than ever when you're working.
Then it's just in earphones, really. Yeah. And you have that kind of private thing, and it's great to get into a space when you're on set. It tends to be that's the way I'll do it.
What do you mean by get into a space when you're on set?
Well, I was talking about atmosphere earlier on, or if you want to get yourself into a certain sort of headspace, or try and head towards somewhere emotionally, there'll be songs that might be appropriate for that particular place that you're headed. So you'll just go away and put them on repeat, and hopefully it'll sort of, have some effect.
Is there ever any music played on set? Seamus McGarvey told me once that it was a trick he used with some performance with somebody really big. I forget who it was. But couldn't get the mood right, so he played a particular piece of music which was not going to be in the film. It wasn't going to be used at all, but it set the mood for the scene, and the actors responded to the music that was in the background.
Yeah, I've had that happen a few times. I love it. I mean, it's really brilliant, and it immediately just it does something to you. Whether or not, like as you say, that track is going to be used in the film or not, it can just affect the actors in a way that they weren't expecting, or just focus you, or create like an atmosphere, or alter the temperature, or do something, because that's what music does, because it's sort of non-intellectual, isn't it? It's kind of like immediately bypasses that and goes straight to the gut. So that's what we're after as actors, to go straight to the gut,
And when you do peakies, that's like, how long are you away? Like 12 weeks or something? I mean, it's a long...
Yeah, 4 months, so a bit longer, 4 months.
And long days, every day.
Yeah, but I'm loath to be a moaning actor.
You're not moaning. No, I'm just talking about the fact that, the level of... I mean, you must be learning lines all the time, for instance. That's a practical thing that people mightn't think of.
Yeah, that's just exercising a muscle, really. And that anyone could learn lines if that's all you did for 20 years.
Yeah,
it's just repeat stuff endlessly.
But it's a lot of lines,
There are a lot. It's quite a wordy show. Yeah.
I mean, the reason I'm asking this is just you're talking about music, and when you finish, I'm wondering what you've had a long day, and it's it's your 6th day of that week, and you're away for 12 weeks, and you've finished your day's shooting, and it's late, and you're presumably in some hotel somewhere, and is music the cure at that point?
Yeah, it's the only thing, really, because you do cancel reality when you're doing something that sort of immersive. You don't really have a social life. You go home and you see your family, but you don't do anything else. So music is the really the only other, for me, it's the only other thing that I can relax to, or, you know, sort of distance myself a little bit from the characters. So it becomes really, really important.
And would there be a particular type of music you'd listen to in that circumstance, where you're away, you're on set, as you say, you're not doing anything else other than the job? Is there a particular type of music that works?
No, it depends. It depends on the mood, you know. Sometimes you need to get energized in the morning. You're getting up, it's excruciatingly early, so you need something to get you going. And other times it depends, man. And you're constantly, all the time, still on that journey of exploration, you know, of finding new stuff, all the time. So it is like a constant companion, really. Okay,
your next choice is...
What is it?
Yeah, Johnny Frierson.
Oh, yeah.
This is a good one. This came out of left field here, because this is a virtually unknown Memphis musician.
Yeah.
Who was the brother of a not particularly well known Memphis singer.
Yeah.
In a band called the Beatles.
I don't know.
Something like that. Not a particularly well known band on the Stax label.
No, and he disappeared then. I think he was a working musician, and then he disappeared. And he made these demos on cassette. And then somebody found them in a thrift store somewhere in Memphis and brought them to someone else, who eventually put them out. And I'm always fascinated by this, you know, there must be so many undiscovered geniuses, you know, in the world that we've yet to find. And unfortunately, this was found and discovered posthumously, and, you know, he'll never know about it. But, like, you put it on and you play it, and the truth, there's a bang of honesty off it, you know, and... that's rare, isn't it? It's totally rare. And it's just him in his garage with a guitar and an amp, and you can hear his foot tapping, and this stuff comes out.
This is Johnny Frierson. The song's called Miracles. Great call there, Cillian. Johnny Frierson there, and Miracles. We have a bit of time left, Cillian, so I'm anxious to kind of keep on going here. Bon Iver.
Yeah, well, amazingly, Bon Iver, Justin Vernon, was one of the artists that we managed to get to Cork for Sounds from Safe Harbour a few weeks ago, and he played in the Opera House. Now, the Opera House, for any of you that have been to the Opera House, like, it's not a huge venue. It's a brilliant venue for theatre and for music. But he played, and I tell you, it was like hair on the back of the neck stuff. It was kind of sensational. The raw emotion of the show, and this track off this album. I mean, everyone, I think, knows the For Emma Forever Ago, the first one that everyone discovered him on, and that's a really heartbreaking album. But this one, he's really pushing, I think, sonically on this one. Anyway, this song for me was just hit me, you know.
All right, this is Bon Iver. I never know with him what the tracks are called, how to find them on the CD. It doesn't make it easy for you. But this is called possibly 8 and then circle in brackets. So 8 circle. Bon Iver. That's quite something, Kelly. You were telling me that when he performed that in Cork, 3 people. That's all. Yeah, because that sounds like a huge.
Yeah, he layers his voice and does it live. It's pretty special.
Cillian, we're coming up to the last tune here, and before I thank you and send you back into the great unknown, here's the showbiz question now. What's next for you, Cillian?
Well, John.
Yes.
Peaky Blinders is coming out in November at some point. I'm not sure exactly when.
It's just occurred to me, I've never seen you as Peaky. I've never, when you're at home, I've never seen you with the shaved head and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's probably because I go through this awkward phase of growing out. So I probably have a hat or an anorak.
With a hood up.
Anorak months.
Do you bring any of him home with you, no?
I know. I mean, I don't know. Like,
you go to work and that's it.
You go to work and then you come home.
Yeah.
But it's ideally you should take a little rest after any job where you have to go a bit deep. You should take a little rest. Yeah. Just for the sake of your family and for everyone else.
So that's coming up.
Yeah.
And And in the big screen movie situation, because the best stuff these days is being made on television, isn't it? Largely.
Well, I mean, there's an argument for that for sure. I mean, in terms of writing, a lot of the really sort of extraordinary writing is definitely happening on television. You know, I still have a romantic love of cinema and feature films, and I still think, you know, you still keep pushing for that quality of writing to exist. And I think it does, and there's some extraordinary directors there. So all is not lost, I think. But yeah, television is pretty exciting at the moment.
Is there a movie in the pipeline that you can mention? I know these things are very complicated, that you can't necessarily mention things that are happening.
I have a film with Mark O'Rowe called The Delinquent Season, which comes out next year.
Great.
He's a brilliant Irish writer.
Isn't he just?
Yeah. And then a film called The Party by Sally Potter, which is in the cinema at the moment, I think. And then, I don't know, I'm hopefully do something with Enda again.
Yeah, the last thing was Ballyturk, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was an extraordinary thing.
It was fun, yeah.
I'll tell you, whatever about Peaky Blinders, I don't know what you felt like after doing that.
Tired.
I'd say you were very tired. Quite something. Quite something. And I want to see, the only other showbiz question I'm going to ask you is this. How close were you to being Batman? I mean, not being in Batman, I mean being Batman.
No, I never got very close to that. No.
You were in the frame, weren't you?
No, I think we were just there to make everyone pretty sure that it should have been Christian Bale. There was no contest. I think that was
loved the Batmans from Cork. I just thought that would have been really something.
As someone called my mother when she was teaching, they used to call her Batmam.
But, you know, we could have a situation where James Bond was from Navan and Batman was from Cork.
There you go.
And then everything would have been okay with the world. Now, your last choice, Cillian Murphy, is Nina Hines. I haven't seen or heard from Nina in a long time.
Nina is living in, well, full disclosure, Nina is an old friend of mine, a good pal of mine, but she's an extraordinary artist, I think, an extraordinary songwriter. And she's living in Berlin and making great music. And this is her one of her most recent releases, and actually Fionn Regan, who's also a Berliner, sings on this with her. So two of my favourite people on one song.
Cillian, thanks a million for coming in, because I know you don't like doing interviews, and I understand entirely why. And of course, this wasn't an interview.
No, it wasn't. It was a chat.
I did ask you the Batman question. I asked you a show business question. No, but I appreciate you coming in and putting so much work into getting the music together and all that. And every good wish to you in all your future.
Well, thank you. And I've loved it. So thanks for having me.
Thanks a million, Cillian. Here's Nina Hines. I'll see you tomorrow at 7 here on RTE Lyric FM.
You've been listening to a podcast of Mystery Train with John Kelly. Mystery Train hits the rails every Sunday to Thursday at 7 p.m.